lot of people want a better life. They want more success, more confidence, more peace, better health, better finances, better work, better relationships, a stronger version of themselves. And when they imagine how life changes, they often imagine something dramatic, a breakthrough moment, a healed opportunity, a sudden transformation, a powerful decision that changes everything at once. They imagine the day they finally become more focused, more disciplined, more productive, more respected, more successful. And because of that, many people are constantly waiting for a big turning point. They wait for the right year, the right opportunity, the right emotional state, the right plan, the right environment, the right level of motivation. They tell themselves that once something major happens, their life will finally begin moving in the direction they want. But real life usually works differently. Most success does not come from one dramatic moment. It comes from the small things, the repeated things, the quiet things, the things that do not look impressive in a single day but become powerful over time. A single word does not seem life changing. A simple pace of breathing does not seem life changing. A single healthy meal does not seem life changing. A single hour of focused work does not seem life changing. A single good decision with money does not seem life changing, and that is exactly why so many people underestimate the thing because they judge the value of an action by its immediate emotional impact. If it does not feel dramatic, they assume it does not matter much. If it does not create visible results, they assume it is too small to change their future. But the truth is that life is shaped less by what you do once in a while and more by what you do repeatedly. Success is not usually the result of one giant effort. It is usually the result of many small efforts that were repeated long enough to become a pattern. A patterns become outcomes. That's why some people slowly build strong, stable, successful lives without ever looking dramatic from the outside. And this is why other people stay stuck even thought they keep waiting for a powerful breakthrough. The breakthrough they are waiting for often looks much smaller than they expected. It looks like consistency, it looks like repetition, it looks like doing simple things long enough for them to compound. That is one of the most important truths about success. The small things matter, not because it one changes our life overnight, but because it one casts a vote for the person you are becoming, and over time the votes add up. That is how life changes, not always in a burst, often in a pattern, and that is why success comes from the small thing repeated every day. It is emotionally satisfying. Big changes feel exciting. They create urgency. They make people feel alive, serious, and full of potential. A huge reset feels more powerful than a small adjustment. A bold promise feels more important than a quiet routine. A complete reinvention feels more meaningful than a tiny repeated habit. And emotionally, that makes sense. Human beings are often more moved by intensity than by consistency. We notice big gestures. We admire visible breakthrough. We tell stories about overnight success, massive transformation, sudden realization, and life changing moment. But what people often forget is that these stories are rarely complete. What looks sudden from the outside is often the result of long, invisible repetition. The promotion that looks instant may have been built on years of quiet competencies. The healthy body that looks dramatic may have been built on years of ordinary habits. The confident person may have spent years doing small uncomfortable things consistently. The financially stable person may have made hundreds of boring, responsible decisions that nobody noticed. The problem is that people are often emotionally attached to the idea of rapid change. They want one decision to recuse them for years of inconsistency. They want one burst of effort to replace a pattern. They want one inspiration to undo years of disorder. And because of that, they often overlook the real mechanism of success. They overlook repetition, they overlook accumulation, they overlook the quiet for of small decisions made again and again. It makes them impatient, it makes them underestimate ordinary effort. It makes them chase emotional highs instead of sustainable pattern, and that is why many people keep restarting their lives but do not keep rebuilding them, because rebuilding them really feels dramatic. It feels repetitive, and repetition is not exciting in the beginning, but it's become powerful later. This is one of the biggest mindset shifts a person can make. Stop asking only what big thing will change my life. Start asking what small thing, if repeated consistently, would change everything. That question leads to a very different life, because success usually enters quietly. It does not always announce itself with intensity. Sometimes it enters through structure, through routine, through patience, through the willingness to keep doing what matters before it looks impressive. One of the most underestimated forces in the life in accumulation. A small action by itself may look weak, almost meaningless, too minor to matter, but repeated actions do not stay small. They begin to get away, they begin to create direction, they begin to shape identity. This is true in almost every area of life. If you save a little money once, it does not look like much. If you save a little money consistently, it begins to create stability. If you retain pace once, it does not seem important. If you retain pace every day, you build knowledge most people never notice until years later. If you walk for 20 minutes once, it does not transform your health. If you walk regularly, it changes your energy, your fitness, your mood, and often your entire relationship with your body. If you spend one focused hour on a meaningful work, it may not look impressive. If you do it repeatedly, you build skill, trust, output, and momentum. This is how success often works. It hides inside repeated simplicity. And because it's high there, many people miss it. They keep looking for dramatic evidence. They want the feeling of immediate change. But accumulation does not usually feel dramatic while it is happening. That is part of why it is so powerful. It is quiet, it is patient, it does not demand attention. It just keeps building until one day the difference becomes obvious. By then, they call it talent. Discipline, success, momentum, confidence, mastery, but underneath all the word very often is accumulation. This is also why small negative pattern matter, because accumulation works in both directions. One careless expense may not destroy your finances. Repeated careless spending can. One last night may not damage your health. Repeated sleep neglect can. They distracted, they may not ruin your work. Repeated distraction can weaken in an entire future. One avoided conversation may not destroy a relationship. Repeated avoidance can. Life amplifies what repeats. That is why the small things should never be dismissed. They are not only small things, they are the early form of larger outcomes. And whether the outcomes become success or regret often depends on you keep doing when the action still looks small. A lot of people quit too early because they misunderstand how progress looks in the beginning. They expect visible results too quickly. They expect effort to feel rewarding right away. They expect the outside world to reflect inner change almost immediately. But more meaningful progress stays invisible for a long time. That does not mean it is not happen. It means it is still developed beneath the surface. A person who starts reading every day may not sound dramatically wiser after 1 week. A person who starts walking every day may not look physically transformed after 2 weeks. A person who starts saving money may not feel financially secure after 1 month. A person who begins building a business, learning a skill, or improving their discipline may not have obvious results early on. This is where many people become discouraged. They say, I am doing the work, but nothing is changing. What they often mean is that nothing is changing visible enough to satisfy their impatience. But success is often quiet before it becomes obvious, and if you do not understand that, you will abandon the progress too early. You will misread the invisible state as failure. You will think the small thing as not working because they have not yet created a dramatic external result. But the invisible state matter deeply. It is where trust is being built, capacity is being built, skill is being built, resilience is being built, a new identity is being built. This is true for almost every worldwide process. The beginning often looks modest and impressive, sometimes even frustrating, because the effort is real. The but the visible reward is delayed. That delay is where many people lose fail. But disciplined people learn something different. They learn to respect invisible progress. They learn that repeated effort is changing them before it changes their circumstances in obvious ways. They stop needing every action to feel immediately worth it. They understand that value is often accumulating quietly. Their understanding gives them patience. And patience is powerful because the person who can stay steady during the invisible state had a huge advantage over the person who only continue when results are obvious. Success often belongs to the person who respected small progress before anyone else could see it. People underestimate small habits for a simple reason. They evaluate them emotionally instead of strategically. A small habit usually does not create a strong emotional reaction. It does not feel heroic. It doesn't create instant pride. It does not look dramatic enough to satisfy the ego. And because of that, people often treat small habits as optional. They think it's just one walk, it's just one glass of water, just it is just 10 minutes of breathing. It is just a small saving decision. It is just 1 hour of focused effort. It is just one early bedtime, and because action seems more in isolation, and assume the effect must also be small. But the effect of repeated behavior is not measured only by what is just once. It's measured by what it becomes when it's turned into part of your life. A 10-minute habit is no longer a 10-minute habit when it becomes a daily rhythm. A small act of discipline is no longer small when it shapes identity. A modest improvement is no longer modest when it changes direction. This is where so many people get trapped. They keep asking whether one action is enough no matter. That is the wrong question. The better question is whether that action repeated often enough would matter. And in many cases, the answer is yes. Very much yes. People also underestimate small habits because they are addicted to urgency. A habit that grows slowly feels less attractive than a strategy that promises rapid result. Even if the slow habit is more reliable, even if the fast strategy collapses. This is why so many people jump from one dramatic plan to another while ignoring the behavior that actually change life. They want transformation without routine, result without repetition, progress without patience, but life usually does not work that way. It rewards that what repeats. And what repeats often begins in forms that look almost too ordinary to respect. This is why major people stop insulting the basics. They stop asking whether simple things are glamorous. They ask whether simple things are effective, and very often they are. That is how success begins to look less mysterious. It's become less about secret techniques and more about humble consistency, which is less exciting to talk about, but far more useful to live by. You are one of the clearest truths in life is this. You are shaped by what you repeat, not only by what you believe. They not only by what you hope for, not only by what you say matter, but by what you actually do again and again. Repetition is one of the strongest forces in personal development. It shapes skill, it shapes health, it shapes mindset. It shapes standards, it shapes identity. If you repeat distraction, you become more distractible. If you repeat focus, you become more capable of focus. If you repeat avoidance, difficult things become even harder. If you repeat courage in small moments, your confidence grows. If you repeat discipline health choices, your body responds. If you repeat careless one, your body responds to that too. This is why the small things matter so much. They are not just action, they are rehearsal. They teach your mind and body what kinds of person you are becoming. Every repeated behavior says something. It says, this is normal for me. And what become normal for you become powerful. That is why success is really separate from daily pattern. People often imagine success as a result that arrive from outside, but much of success is simply the long-term consequence of internalized repetition. A writer becomes a reader by writing. A strong person becomes stronger by training. A focused person becomes focused by practicing focus, and a trustworthy person becomes trustworthy by keeping small promises repeatedly. A disciplined person becomes disciplined by honoring structure often enough that it's become part of their nature. This means your life is not being shaped only in your biggest moments. It is being shaped in your repeated ones. The repeated way you speak to yourself, the repeated way you spend your time, the repeated way you respond to discomfort, the repeated way you handle money, food, effort, stress, rest, and attention. These things may look ordinary, but they are powerful because they are repeated, and repeated things do not stay ordinary. They begin to define the quality of a life. That is why a person must stop asking only whether an action feels impressive. A better question is, do I want this to become part of who I am? Because if you repeat it, eventually it will. One of the deepest reasons more repeated action matter is that they shape identity. Identity is not built only through what you say about yourself. It is built through evidence, through repeated proof, through behavior that your mind can look at that and say, "This is who I am." A person does not become disciplined by declaring it once. They become disciplined by repeatedly doing disciplined things. A person does not become healthy by wanting health. They become healthier by repeating supportive behaviors. A person does not become confident by thinking confident thoughts alone. They become more confident by repeatedly acting in ways that build trust in themselves. They matter because identity is powerful. When a behavior begins to feel like part of who you are, it's become easier to maintain. It requires less internal conflict, less negotiation, less emotional struggle. This is why small actions are so valuable. They are manageable enough to repeat, and once repeated, they begin to create evidence for a new self image. If you write a little every day, you start to become someone who writes. If you move your body regularly, you start to become someone who takes care of their body. If you shave consistently, you start to become someone who handles money with responsibility. If you show up for work with focus at each day, you become someone who can be relied on. This progress is often missed because people are obsessed with outcomes. They want the identity without respecting the repetition that create it. They want to feel successful before they have built success pattern. They want confidence before they have built self-trust. They want change without enough repeated behavior to support a change self-image. But identity does not respond well to fantasy alone. It responds to proof, and proof comes from small repeated acts. That is why the little things matter more than they seem to. They are not only changing your schedule, they are changing your sense of self, and that may be even more important because when identity shifts, behavior become more stable. Not because life gets easier, but because the action now feels more aligned with who you believe you are, and that is one of the most powerful forms of momentum a person can build. In work, people often admire the final result while ignoring the repeated habits that made it possible. They admire the successful They admire the successful business but not years of patient effort. They admire the polished speaker but not the repeated practice. They admire the skilled professional but not the ordinary discipline that build competences. Most professional success is built on things that look almost boring from the outside. Answering emails on time, preparing properly, practicing skill consistently, showing up with focus, doing good work even when nobody is praising it, learning steadily, improving system, finishing tasks, returning after a mistake, being reliable in small matter. These things do not feel dramatic, but together they build reputation, and reputation matters because many opportunities come not only from talent but from trust. Can you be counted on? Can you do the work regularly? Can you maintain standard under ordinary pressure? Can you keep producing when the novelty has faded? Those questions are often answered not by one big performance, but by repeated small action over time. This is also how mastery develops. A person rarely becomes excellent through one intense session alone. They become excellent by practicing fundamentals repeatedly, by correcting small error, by refining small details, by returning to the work often enough. The quality depends. That is why people who chase only dramatic progress often struggle in their careers. They want fast recognition, but they resist slow mastery. They want big result, but they disrespect foundational repetition. They want visible success, but they do not always value the invisible habits that create. Yet, though habits are often the real source of long-term advantage, a person who improves a little each day will often surpass a person who waits for big bursts of brilliance, because brilliance without consistency is difficult to build on. But steady competence becomes a powerful force. It compounds, it creates trust, creates skill. It creates opportunities that outsiders often call luck, when in reality the person simply built enough value through repetition that opportunity became more likely. That is how work success often happens, quietly, repeatedly, one small action at a time. How is one of the clearest example of how small repeated actions shape life. Most people know what dramatic health effort look like. Extreme diets, intense workout plan, sudden detoxes, aggressive routine, but those things often do not last. They burn hot and fade fast. Real health is usually built in a different way. It is built through small choices repeated consistently, walking regularly, sleeping better, drinking enough water, eating more balanced meals, producing obvious excess, strengthening a few times a week, sitting alert, managing stay straight better. The habits do not always create fast dramatic change. That is why many people underestimate them. They want visible result quickly, but the body responds to pattern, not only to intensity. A person who goes on one extreme diet may feel powerful for a week. A person who builds stable eating pattern may change their health much more deeply over time. A person who trains with discipline for 2 months and quits may feel intense for a season. A person who works, lives, sleeps, and eats with reasonable consistency for years often builds something far stronger. That is one of the most important truths in health. The body The body rewards what you repeat, not only what you attempt dramatically. This also matters emotionally when health is built on repeated small behavior. It's become more stable, less tied to mood, less tied to motivation, less tied to shame, more connected to lifestyle that makes it easier to maintain. And what is maintainable is powerful because there is no point building a system that works only during a highly motivated season. The goal is not a temporary performance. The goal is a life your body can benefit from over time. This is why people who respect the basics often do better in the long run than people who keep changing the newest extreme method. The basics may look less exciting, but they are often what lasts, and in health, what lasts usually matter more. People often think financial success requires a huge income, a huge break, or a huge opportunity. Sometimes large opportunities do matter, but financial stability is very often built through repeated small decisions. Spending less than you earn, saving regularly, avoiding careless debt, thinking before buying, planning instead of reacting, making fewer emotional money decisions, learning slowly, investing consistently when possible. Though actions do not feel exciting in the moment, that is part of why many people struggle with them. Financial responsibility is often less emotionally thrilling than financial impulse. Impulse gives a quick feeling, responsibility often gives a delayed reward. But delayed reward is where a lot of real security comes from. This is another place where accumulation matters. A small amount saved regularly grows. A repeat habit of careful spending protects future options. A repeat habit of financial awareness changes stress level over time. And on the other side, repeated small financial carelessness can create serious problems. One unnecessary purchase may not matter much. Repeated thoughtless spending can. One ignored bill may not destroy stability. Repeated avoidance gain. One emotional money decision may not correct a future. Repeated emotional money behavior often will. This is why money is not only a math issue, it is a habit issue, a pattern issue, a repeated behavior issue. The people who become stable often do not feel dramatic why it is happening. They are not always making exciting choices. They are often making patient ones, and patience with money is deeply powerful because it's increase freedom later, it reduces panic later. It gives you more control later. Again, the key idea is the same. The small things matter because they repeat, and when they repeat, they stop being small. They become the structure of your financial life. That is why wise people do not wait until they make more money to become more responsible. They start with the pattern they can control now because the pattern repeated over time often matter as much as the opportunity itself. Many people are more attracted to intensity than consistency. Intensity feels impressive. It creates a sense of seriousness. It makes a person feel like they are really changing. Consistency feels less emotional, less dramatic, sometimes even too simple, but consistency usually wins. A person who works out intensely for 10 days and quits gains less than a person who trains reasonably reasonably for a year. A person who saves aggressively for 1 month and then return to chaos gain less than a person who saves modestly but steadily. A person who reads for 5 hours once and then disappear gains than a person who reads for 20 minutes every day. A person who works in hill burns and then burns out often produces less over time than a person who works with sustainable focus. This matter because intensity often flatters the ego. Consistency builds reality. Intensity say, look how hard I can go. Consistency say, look how long I can stay. And in most meaningful area of life, staying matter more than busting, because the body, mind, finances, relationships, and skill all respond to long-term pattern more than short emotional surges. This does not mean intensity is bad. At the right time, it can be useful, but intensity without consistency is often unstable, and unstable effort really compile well. Consistency is different. It may not feel exciting every day, but it creates depth, momentum, trust, identity, accumulation. Those things become very powerful. That is why successful people often look less extreme than outsiders expect. They are not always making dramatic moves, and they are often repeating sensible ones.